In case you had any doubt, the producers of the 1964 James Bond film Goldfinger knew they were pushing their luck with a character by the name of Pussy Galore. Here, though, is the story of how they got some indirect help from the British royal family to get past the censors.
Stories. We would be honored if you would join us.
Right, so you don't need me to tell you that the James Bond series of films isn't shy of a double entendre. But even the team behind 1964's classic Goldfinger figured and knew they were pushing their luck with the character to be played by Honor Blackman in that film. That character, entirely innocently, is called Pussy Galore. Now, Goldfinger is the third of the official 007 movies starring Sean Connery, Gert Frobe as Goldfinger, Shirley Eaton as Jill Masterson, and Sean Connery, 007, Honor Blackman as Pussy Galore. Now, it's a character name that's not on the subtle side. It's like, I don't know, throwing a rusty fridge freezer at your nether regions. It's that level of subtlety, isn't it? And, I mean, so far, the names of female lead characters in Bond films, Sylvia Trench, Honey Rider, I mean, they let's just say they hadn't caused quite as many meetings as this. And the thing is that the producers, Albert R. Broccoli and Harry Saltzman at that time, knew they might have a problem. The screenwriters, Richard Maybaum and Paul Dane, along with director Guy Hamilton, they genuinely thought they might not be able to carry the character name over to the big screen. For the character of Pussy Galore was an invention of Ian Fleming, the writer of the Source 007 novels. It's in the novel of Goldfinger, and there was a little bit of, do you change the name for the film? Will it pass muster? Because the Bond films were going around the world, and you were dealing with different censorship bodies in different parts of the world. So it didn't just have to get past the UK censors or the US censors. They had to hedge their bets and try and get it past pretty much everyone. And this was an unknown, really. And so there were a bunch. I mean, they were willing to give this a go, but they had backup plans. So for a start, they tamed the character from the novel into the film. They pulled back on her sexuality a little bit. And United Artists, which was backing the movie, had said, we may yet need to change her name from Pussy Galore to Kitty Galore when we release the film. It was the American censors in particular that they were all concerned about. It turns out there are a couple of different ways, two different stories of how they got past the American censors. Even to this day, if you're trying to get sex and nookie and fruity things past the American censors, it can be quite tricky. Violence, no problem at all. Kaboom! Anything mildly fruity, you're in trouble. So the main tale here, it talks about a brainwave on the part of a man called Tom Carlyle, who was working for the Bond producers Eon Productions. He worked as their publicity representative, and he had a brainwave for how they could do this. So they shot Goldfinger with the character Pussy Galore. So come the premiere of Goldfinger in London, he had an idea. So Sean Connery, they knew, wasn't going to be at the premiere. He couldn't get there. The main star was going to be Honor Blackman. She's the highest profile member of the cast who would be walking the red carpet in London for the Goldfinger rollout. And, as we talked about, Honor Blackman referred to as Pussy Galore throughout the film. And so Carlyle had this idea, and it was roping in a bit of royalty to help. And here's where the British royal family came in. Whether they knew they were part of this or not, who knows? But Tom Carlyle struck up a deal with UK newspapers. And the idea was you can have an exclusive picture of Honor Blackman at the premiere alongside Prince Philip. You would also then be entitled to very lucrative worldwide syndication rights for that picture. That's the deal. You get the image, you get the worldwide rights. In return, wherever the image was sold, it had to be captioned in one of two ways. Let's get through this together, folks. It either had to be captioned Pussy and the Prince, or the Prince and the Pussy. Perhaps you like cats. I don't know. But the newspapers, no problem with that at all. We'll agree to that. Took the photo. It wasn't going to be a problem in the UK press. Took the photo, printed it, caption started doing its rounds, worldwide syndication began, and the picture started appearing around the world with one of those two captions on it. Thus, by the time it got to America, there wasn't actually much left to censor. They kind of, the preemptive shot had worked. The photograph had been seen. The name of Pussy Galore was now widely out. The name of Pussy Galore was now widely out there in American newspapers. And Albert R. Broccoli thus took press cuttings to his meeting with the American censors, and they had to reluctantly agree. Yeah, we've got to let the name stand. And the thinking was, if Prince Philip was in the picture, well, he's not going to get involved with something that's a bit amiss, is he? You know? And so no change was going to be required. However, they didn't entirely get away with it. They didn't entirely, because on the promotional material specific to Goldfinger in America, that they were not, United Artists were not allowed to use the name of the character of Pussy Galore on any of it. At best, she could be referred to as Miss Galore. Now, Honor Blackman was on the interview circuit. No such restriction on her. She was having a blast with it. She would drop the name of Pussy Galore into loads of interviews as she went and did her promotional duties for the movie. And also, you can hardly say that the final cut of the film plays things down either. In the end, they went hardball. They went for it and kind of got away with it as well. But Guy Hamilton, the director of the film, in Matthew Field's excellent book, Some Kind of Hero, there's an alternate version of this story as well. And it involves Guy Hamilton taking a man called Geoffrey Sherlock out for dinner. I can't recommend Some Kind of Hero enough if you're a Bond fan. It really is great. I've got no link with the authors. I just think it's a delicious book. So Guy Hamilton tells the story of taking Geoffrey Sherlock and his wife out for dinner. This was important because Geoffrey Sherlock was the American censor. And as Hamilton describes, quote, "We conned Sherlock in the usual way by inviting him and his wife out to dinner and saying we were very big supporters of the Republican or Democratic Party. We trade a glimpse of," his word, "tit for something else." Said it was appalling, and it sort of worked. And you look into the history of the Motion Picture Association of America at this stage as well, and one element of that story, which is relevant to the Goldfinger tale here, is the association was without an official boss at this point. At the time, Goldfinger was going through the censors. Now, a man called Eric Johnston had been heading up the MPAA for 18 years in the States, but he passed away from a stroke in 1963 while he was still its chief. And there was a 3-year period there where the MPAA didn't have a president. It wasn't until the infamous Jack Valenti was appointed in 1966 that it had a new formal boss. And so Goldfinger slips through in December 1964 with a tit removed. And while Geoffrey Sherlock had threatened to ban the film and was chief censor at the time, did he have the same clout as if he'd been the actual president of the MPAA? Probably not, I don't think. And as such, the MPAA didn't quite have the usual amount of teeth. And the photo with Prince Philip had done a bit of the work. There's Honor Blackman. And it was a multi-pronged attack, really. Valenti, for his money, would head up the MPAA for 38 years. There's no way it would have got through under his watch. He was off a lot of Christmas card lists by the time his time was done. And for the Bond team, they sort of knew they'd pushed their luck here. And while we'd have in the future Plenty O'Toole in Diamonds Are Forever, Mary Goodnight, we'd have Holly Goodhead, Jenny Flex, they didn't ever go quite that blatant again. Up until the end of what The World Is Not Enough, and the famous line Pierce Brosnan says regarding Denise Richards' character. I mean, yeah, that when I went to see that at the cinema groaned, and not surprisingly. Basically, they knew they'd pushed their luck. They knew they got away with one, and with a tougher regime coming through the MPAA, it didn't seem worth poking the bear again. But that collection of stories, that whole spaghetti mess there, is what got Pussy Galore onto cinema screens in the 1960s without being censored. Blimey.